We're sitting here using synthetic data generation. We're going to use reinforcement learning. We're going to practice it in our mind. We're going to have AI working with AI, training each other, just like student and teacher debaters. All of that is going to increase the size of our model. It's going to increase the amount of data that we have, and we're going to have to build even bigger GPUs. Hopper is fantastic, but we need bigger GPUs. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to a very, very big GPU.
NVIDIA is one of the biggest players in the technology sector, with a market cap over $2 trillion US, making Jensen Huang, its CEO, one of the richest guys in the game as he's one of the largest shareholders. This company, which is somewhat a shadow of its former self, once made products primarily for gamers. It was built by gamers, and now those gamers no longer matter, it seems. But that's a story for another day. Today, we're going to rewind the clock back to the mid-2010s and look at some of the best work, the Maxwell microarchitecture. This architecture powered some of the legendary GPUs of the time, like the GTX 980, GTX 970, and of course, the GTX Titan X. I'm not an engineer, I'm just a guy that loves technology and loves talking about it, so I'm going to break down the Maxwell architecture from that perspective. Alright, with that said, let's talk about Maxwell. The story of NVIDIA's Maxwell microarchitecture, the foundation of the GeForce 900 series, begins in March of 2013. At the time, NVIDIA announced that the then state-of-the-art Kepler architecture, which powered legendary GPUs like the GTX 780 and the GTX Titan, would soon have a successor. This successor, codenamed Maxwell, paid homage to one of history's greatest physicists, James Clerk Maxwell. James Clerk Maxwell was a pioneer of modern physics, known for his groundbreaking work in unifying electricity and magnetism. In the 1860s, he published a set of equations dubbed Maxwell's equations that demonstrated how electric and magnetic fields are not independent but intertwined aspects of a single force, electromagnetism. His insights not only revealed that light itself was an electromagnetic wave traveling at an astonishing speed, but also laid the groundwork for technologies that shape our world to this day. Think radio waves, power grids, and even quantum mechanics. While Maxwell's equations belong to a different era and field, their legacy resonates in modern engineering and technology. Naming a revolutionary GPU architecture after him wasn't a coincidence. It was a symbolic tribute to a thinker whose work unified concepts and pushed humanity's understanding forward. Just as Maxwell brought clarity to the invisible forces of electromagnetism, NVIDIA's Maxwell architecture aimed to unify and optimize GPU performance with unprecedented efficiency. This connection between the past and the present highlights something profound. Innovation never exists in isolation. It builds on the insights, discoveries, and breakthroughs of pioneers who came before. With Maxwell's spirit of efficiency and unification as a guiding principle, NVIDIA was ready to revolutionize PC gaming and computing once again. NVIDIA's Kepler architecture set a new standard for power efficiency, but Maxwell had even bolder ambitions. The mission was clear: deliver cutting-edge graphics while pushing the boundaries of efficiency. To achieve this, NVIDIA adopted a two-generation approach. The first generation focused on low power efficiency, perfect for laptops and mobile users where portability and battery life were critical. The second generation was geared toward raw performance, targeting high-end GPUs for desktops and enthusiasts who demanded uncompromising power. This versatility allowed Maxwell to meet diverse user needs while adhering to a core principle: maximizing performance per watt. Let's explore the secrets behind this architectural marvel, starting with its redesigned memory architecture and its first generation GPUs. NVIDIA made a strategic trade-off with Maxwell's first generation to improve efficiency. The size of the level 2 cache was increased from 256 kilobytes in Kepler to 2 megabytes in Maxwell, an 8x increase. At the same time, NVIDIA reduced the memory bus width from 192-bit to 128-bit. While reducing the memory bus width might seem counterintuitive, since fewer lanes means lower data throughput, the expanded level 2 cache meant that the GPU relied less on constantly fetching data from VRAM. It's akin to a carpenter using a larger, faster toolbox right next to his workbench instead of repeatedly running to a distant storage room to get the tools needed for the job. This clever trade-off saved power and resources, which NVIDIA redirected towards re-engineering the Streaming Multiprocessor. The Streaming Multiprocessor, or SM, is the heart of NVIDIA GPUs. It houses CUDA cores, which are specialized processors capable of handling thousands of instruction threads concurrently. Unlike CPUs, which typically focus on single-threaded performance, and to a limited extent multi-threaded performance, GPUs thrive on multi-threaded parallel workloads that require trillions of operations per second. 3D rendering and AI computations are tasks which benefit greatly from this parallelization. These SMs are arranged into groups known as graphic processing clusters, or GPCs for short, where a single GPC can contain a number of SMs. In Maxwell's GM204 chip, using the GTX 970, NVIDIA redesigned the SMs for greater efficiency and power density by increasing the number of SMs per GPC. Despite the performance increase, Maxwell's die size grew by only 25% compared to its Kepler GK104 predecessor. NVIDIA achieved this while sticking to the same 28nm process node from TSMC. Traditionally, such performance boosts would require a transition to a smaller process node to mitigate power consumption, but Maxwell delivered greater performance per watt through architectural improvements alone. This redesign made Maxwell an incredible feat of engineering, improving power efficiency without relying on a die shrink. NVIDIA further enhanced Maxwell's efficiency using clock gating and power gating, two techniques for managing power consumption. Clock gating selectively disables the clock signal to idle sections of the SM. Think of it as turning off appliances in rooms that you are not using, keeping power ready for quick activation. Power gating takes this a step further by completely cutting off power to inactive sections, akin to unplugging unused devices. While power gating saves more power, the trade-off is a slightly longer wait time when those sections are needed again. Together, these methods allow Maxwell to scale power usage dynamically, saving energy without compromising performance. NVIDIA's GPU Boost technology, first introduced in Kepler, dynamically adjusted the GPU's clock speed to maximize performance while staying within power and thermal limits. GPU Boost 2.0, used in Maxwell, brought even finer control. It responded more precisely to temperature, power draw, and workload, scaling clock speeds in real time. Enthusiasts gained more flexibility to fine-tune performance based on their needs, making Maxwell's GPUs incredibly versatile. This innovation meant Maxwell GPUs could push harder during demanding workloads, while conserving power during lighter workloads, an essential step in achieving its efficiency-redefined mission. The first GPUs to showcase Maxwell's efficiency were the GTX 750 and GTX 750 Ti, based on the GM107 chip. These cards embody the low power benefits of Maxwell's first generation while delivering impressive performance for their price. The GTX 750 Ti in particular struck a perfect balance for budget-conscious gamers. It could handle 1080p gaming without breaking a sweat, or the bank. This GPU holds a special place in my heart. It was the first gaming GPU I bought back in 2015 and has served me very well during my early days of PC gaming. Some of my oldest videos on this channel were powered by the GTX 750 Ti, and it's easy to see why it was such a hit. It offered incredible value and reliability for its time. With the first generation of Maxwell focusing on power efficiency, Maxwell's second generation turned its sights onto raw performance without sacrificing the energy-saving benefits. By building upon its redesigned memory architecture and the improved Streaming Multiprocessor, NVIDIA was able to unlock even greater performance while staying on the same 28nm process node. In this next part, we'll explore the competitive landscape leading up to Maxwell's second generation, the raw performance of the flagship GPUs, and the key features that cemented Maxwell's dominance in the graphics card market. The competition between NVIDIA and AMD in the early 2010s was fierce. NVIDIA's Kepler-based GTX 780 had been dethroned by AMD's Radeon R9 290 in late 2013. The Radeon R9 290 delivered superior performance, about 12% faster than the GTX 780, with a higher memory bandwidth of 320 GB per second and a competitive price of $399. Its main drawback was that it ran hot and loud, consuming more power than NVIDIA's flagship. NVIDIA's counter-strike to this was the GTX 780 Ti, released on November 7, 2013. The CUDA core count increased by 25% from 2,304 to 2,880. The memory bandwidth grew to 336 GB per second from this GTX 780's 288 GB per second. It was 10% faster than the Radeon R9 290, but was 75% more expensive at launch, with an MSRP of $699 compared to the R9 290's $399. AMD then responded with the R9 290X and the dual GPU monster R9 295X2. The 290X offered near GTX 780 Ti performance at a lower price of $549. The 295X2 delivered a staggering 500W TDP and required 900W power supplies, but dominated the performance benchmarks with its dual GPU design. It delivered a 24% increase in performance over the GTX 780 Ti, dethroning it as the performance king in the process. But with a launch price of $1,500, it didn't make much sense to purchase this product from a value perspective. NVIDIA obviously wouldn't take this level of disrespect lying down. Their next move would redefine the market entirely. On September 19, 2014, NVIDIA launched the first GPUs based on Maxwell's second generation, the GeForce GTX 980 and the GeForce GTX 970. Both were based on the GM204 die, but the 970 was based on a cut-down version of that die. The GTX 970 immediately became a fan favorite by delivering a performance similar to a GTX 780 Ti and AMD's R9 290X, but with dramatically lower power consumption. The 970's 140W TDP was 41% lower than the 780 Ti's 250W TDP and 49% lower than the R9 290X's 290W. With a price tag of $329, it was clear that this product was a far better value option. The 980 showcased the full potential of Maxwell's second generation. With a 12% performance boost over the GTX 970, it surpassed not only the 780 Ti but also AMD's flagship Radeon R9 290X with a TDP of 165W and a launch price of $549, placing it in a sweet spot for enthusiasts seeking top-tier performance without AMD's power-hungry alternatives. Even AMD's later R9 390X, released in mid-2015, couldn't dethrone the GTX 980. AMD's dual GPU R9 295X2 remained competitive, but was impractical for most buyers given its extreme price and power requirements. Released on June 2, 2015, the GTX 980 Ti marked a major milestone in one of Maxwell's crowning achievements, combining top-tier performance with exceptional value. With 6GB of GDDR5 memory, a bandwidth of 337GB per second, and 2,816 CUDA cores, the GTX 980 Ti offered enthusiasts a GPU that rivaled the performance of NVIDIA's own Titan X at a significantly lower price of $649. It easily outpaced AMD's Radeon R9 Fury and Fury X, leaving them unable to compete on performance and power efficiency. Even AMD's dual GPU R9 295X2, with its extreme power consumption and high price tag, couldn't compete with the 980 Ti's appeal. The 980 Ti solidified its dominance by delivering flagship-level performance while maintaining Maxwell's hallmark of superior power efficiency, making it a staple choice for serious gamers and enthusiasts alike. The Titan X represented the pinnacle of Maxwell's architectural design, showcasing NVIDIA's ability to push the limits of GPU performance. With 3,072 CUDA cores and 12GB of GDDR5 memory, it provided twice the memory capacity of the GTX 980 Ti and a modest 9% increase in CUDA core count while retaining the same 337GB of memory bandwidth. Designed as the ultimate expression of Maxwell's potential, the Titan X was geared towards professionals and enthusiasts who demanded unparalleled performance for gaming, rendering, and computational workloads. While its steep price limited its appeal to most consumers, the Titan X demonstrated the full capabilities of Maxwell and cemented NVIDIA's position as the leader in high-performance GPUs. The Maxwell architecture also brought mid-range and entry-level GPUs to the market. with the GTX 960 and GTX 950 aiming to provide a balance between performance and power efficiency for budget-conscious gamers. Released in January of 2015, the GTX 960 featured 1024 CUDA cores, a base clock of 1127 MHz, and 2GB of GDDR5 memory with 112 GB per second of bandwidth. Priced at $199 US, it was targeted at 1080p gaming, offering solid efficiency but struggling to stand out in performance. Positioned between the GTX 670 and AMD's Radeon R9 380, it offered only marginal performance improvements over the older GTX 670 and GTX 760, which limited its appeal. NVIDIA later released a 4GB variant of the GTX 960 to address concerns about future-proofing. However, this didn't significantly change the market reception of the product. The GTX 950, launched in August of 2015, was designed as an entry-level option with 768 CUDA cores, 2GB of memory, and a bandwidth of 106GB per second, priced at $159 US. While its efficiency and suitability for esports titles were appreciated, it faced stiff competition from its predecessor, the GTX 750 Ti, which offered similar performance at a lower price point. Both GPUs, the 950 and 960, demonstrated Maxwell's efficiency but didn't achieve the same level of market impact as their higher-end counterparts. NVIDIA's reference models for the GTX 900 series featured a basic, blower-style cooling design with a vapor chamber heatsink, prioritizing simplicity and cost over peak performance. While this design helped keep prices lower, it resulted in higher thermals and lower GPU boost clocks compared to the dual-fan cooling solutions offered by NVIDIA's AIB partners like ASUS, VXGI, and MSI. These reference cards were manufactured by Foxconn, a long-standing partner of NVIDIA that continues to collaborate on projects such as AI-driven data center solutions. For gamers, the higher thermals of these reference models often led to inferior gaming experiences, which is why most customers prefer to wait for the AIB partner cards, which provided better cooling and performance. However, for those eager to adopt the latest GPUs or simply those who valued NVIDIA's branding, the reference models offered a straightforward entry point into the Maxwell series. Maxwell wasn't just about hardware innovation. It also introduced or improved several key software features that enhanced the gaming and rendering experience. These technologies pushed graphical fidelity, improved performance, and offered new tools for developers and gamers alike. Let's dive into the most impactful software advancements of the Maxwell architecture. First up is Voxel Global Illumination, or VXGI for short, an advanced lighting technique that brought realistic, dynamic lighting to 3D scenes in real time. Global illumination itself is the cornerstone of realistic lighting, accounting for both direct lighting, where light travels from a source to an object, and indirect lighting, where light bounces off illuminated surfaces to light nearby objects. While this approach creates highly immersive visuals, it's incredibly computationally expensive, especially in scenes with multiple light sources. VXGI simplifies the process by relying on voxels, 3D pixels that store more data than traditional 2D pixels. Each voxel captures details like position, opacity, and lighting information, creating a spatially aware 3D grid of the scene. The VXGI process involves 4 key steps. Number 1, scene representation, where the 3D environment is broken down into a voxel grid, where each voxel represents a portion of the scene. Number 2, lighting storage. Direct and indirect lighting data are stored within these voxels. Number 3, voxel cone tracing. Light is traced through the voxel grid, simulating real-world behaviors like soft shadows, color bleeding, and dynamic lighting. Number 4, real-time application. VXGI dynamically adjusts lighting based on the player's movements and changes the scene, making it perfect for games and interactive simulations. Though voxel-based global illumination wasn't unique to NVIDIA, VXGI enabled the GPUs to perform this task faster and more efficiently, making real-time global illumination feasible in games for the first time. Next, we have multi-frame sampled anti-aliasing, or MFAA for short, a smarter anti-aliasing technique designed to smooth jagged edges with minimal performance cost. Traditional anti-aliasing methods sample multiple points per pixel to calculate colors and reduce the stair-step effect on edges. While effective, these methods can come with a steep performance penalty. Multi-frame anti-aliasing takes a more innovative approach. Instead of sampling the same points per pixel for every frame, it alternates the sampling process across successive frames. Over time, this technique achieves the same visual quality as higher sample anti-aliasing, but at a fraction of the computational cost. By distributing the workloads across multiple frames, MFAA balances quality and performance, giving gamers smoother visuals without a significant performance drop. Dynamic Super Resolution, or DSR for short, brought 4K-like visuals to lower resolution displays. This technology allows a game to be rendered at a resolution higher than the monitor's native resolution, then downscales it for display. The result is a sharper, more detailed image with reduced aliasing. For example, thanks to DSR, a 1080p monitor can display a game rendered at 2560 by 1440, which is a scale factor of 1.33x. This is essentially a driver-level implementation of supersampling, which was traditionally handled within individual game engines. By moving this feature to the GPU driver, NVIDIA made it accessible for nearly any full-screen game, empowering gamers to enjoy high-quality visuals without waiting for developer support. Conservative Rasterization improved rendering accuracy by enhancing how the GPU determines which pixels to shade in a 3D scene. Traditional rasterization shades only pixels whose center points intersect with a polygon, often leading to inaccuracies at the edges of connected polygons. These inaccuracies can result in visual artifacts such as gaps between objects. Conservative Rasterization solves this by shading all pixels that overlap with a polygon, regardless of whether the center points intersect. This approach produces more accurate geometry and reduces visual artifacts, especially in scenes with tightly connected objects. While this is especially useful for applications like collision detection, where precise geometry is critical, it does come with a trade-off. Overestimating pixel shading can increase the GPU's workload. It's worth noting that conservative rasterization is not exclusive to NVIDIA and is part of the DirectX 12 graphics API, maintained by Microsoft. Maxwell was NVIDIA's first architecture to support this feature, giving developers more tools for fine-tuned rendering. The software improvements introduced with Maxwell weren't just incremental, they transformed how gamers and developers interacted with 3D environments. VXGI brought dynamic realistic lighting to games, while MFAA and DSR allowed gamers to enjoy smoother and sharper visuals without sacrificing performance. Conservative rasterization, though primarily aimed at developers, enabled more accurate rendering of applications requiring precise geometry. These features underscored Maxwell's focus on efficiency and innovation, proving that groundbreaking hardware could be matched with equally transformative software. Together, they set a new standard for what gamers and developers could expect from modern GPUs. No examination of Maxwell's legacy would be complete without addressing its controversies, particularly the infamous GTX 970 memory controversy. What began as an anomaly in user-reported memory usage soon unraveled into one of NVIDIA's biggest public relations crises. Owners of the GTX 970 noticed that their cards only utilized 3.5GB of the advertised 4GB of VRAM, while the GTX 980, also equipped with 4GB, utilized the full capacity. This discrepancy raised suspicions. Why would two GPUs from the same architecture and with seemingly identical memory configurations behave differently? In January 2015, the truth came to light. NVIDIA confirmed that the GTX 970's memory was split into two segments, 3.5GB of high-speed memory and a secondary 0.5GB segment that operated at a significantly slower speed. This segmentation stemmed from the card's reduced crossbar resources and was designed to prioritize performance in most scenarios by favoring the faster memory segment. According to NVIDIA, the secondary segment would only be used when more than 3.5GB of memory was required, and they claimed that there was no noticeable performance loss when both segments were active. However, these reassurances failed to quell the outrage. Users conducting studies found that the slower 0.5GB segment created significant performance bottlenecks in certain workloads. Further analysis revealed that the smaller segment operated at 28GB per second, a stark contrast from the 3.5GB segment's 196GB per second, and an 86% performance drop. The 256-bit memory bus width was also misleading, as it was divided unevenly between the segments, 224 bits for the larger pool and only 32 bits for the smaller. These discoveries, compounded by the reductions in level 2 cache from 2 MB to 1.75 MB and ROPs from 64 to 56, painted a clear picture. The GTX 970 was not the product NVIDIA had marketed. In response to the mounting pressure from the press and users, NVIDIA issued a statement attributing the discrepancies to an error by their technical marketing team. They claimed that the team was unaware of the GTX 970's unique partial disable capabilities when drafting the product specifications, leading to an incorrect listing of ROPs, cache size, and memory configuration. NVIDIA asserted that these errors were unintentional, stating, quote, "This error then made it into the final copy of the guide, not getting caught even after being shared around various groups at NVIDIA," end quote. While some, like Anantech's Ryan Smith, argued that NVIDIA had little to gain by unintentionally misleading consumers, I find this explanation implausible. How can NVIDIA's marketing team get every other specification correct yet fail to notice major architectural differences? The design decision to split the memory, reduce cache, and alter the ROP count was deliberate, evident in the GTX 970's crossbar diagram, which clearly shows the disabled level 2 cache module and shared memory controllers. It seems far more likely that NVIDIA knowingly withheld this information to avoid skepticism and preserve the GTX 970's competitive market position. Unsurprisingly, the controversy polarized public opinion. Many dismissed the issue, arguing that the GTX 970 was still a fantastic card for the price and performance. Comments like, quote, "It's a screaming card at a great price, move along now," end quote, flooded forums, reflecting a vocal segment of NVIDIA's fanbase that downplayed the controversy. However, others saw the situation for what it was: deceptive marketing that misled consumers. The backlash escalated when Adhar Mahmood filed a class action lawsuit against NVIDIA, accusing the company of false advertising. Supported by over 11,000 signatures on a Change.org petition, the lawsuit gained traction in both the European Commission and the Federal Trade Commission. NVIDIA ultimately settled, issuing a $30 refund per GTX 970 units sold, a figure derived from the slower memory segment's reduced value. NVIDIA also paid $1.3 million in attorney fees, marking a rare legal defeat for the tech giant. While there's no definitive proof that NVIDIA intentionally misled consumers, I firmly believe that they did. The argument that the marketing team was unaware of the GTX 970's technical limitations is hard to swallow, given the deliberate design choices visible in the GPU's architecture. It's implausible to claim ignorance of decisions that would so clearly impact performance. Furthermore, NVIDIA's explanation felt defensive and insincere, aiming more to shift blame than to genuinely address their customers' concerns. This controversy highlights a disturbing trend in corporate behavior, prioritizing short-term gains over transparency. NVIDIA's decision to market the GTX 970 as a full 4GB card with no mention of its segmented memory configuration was a calculated move to protect sales. While the card performed well in most scenarios, the dishonesty surrounding its specifications was a betrayal of customer trust. Despite the GTX 970 controversy, the Maxwell architecture left a permanent mark on the GPU industry. It set new standards for power efficiency, introduced groundbreaking software features like VXGI and DSR, and delivered flagship GPUs like the GTX 980 Ti and Titan X that dominated their respective markets. For many gamers, Maxwell was a transformative generation, making high-performance gaming more accessible and efficient than ever before. However, the GTX 970 controversy serves as a cautionary tale about corporate accountability and the importance of transparency. It's a reminder that even the most innovative companies must be held to ethical standards, especially when marketing products to loyal customers. In the end, Maxwell's legacy is a mixture of brilliance and controversy, proof that technical excellence cannot fully absolve a company of its missteps.